Alright guys, I'm recording this a couple of days after everything else in this video and I am not super happy with the way things turned out. If you watched the first Zen and the Art of Competitive Eating video that you put out, then you know that I talked a little bit about how sometimes I feel like I have some trust issues where I have trouble fully trusting people just because it seems like in the past I've been like stood up on, I've been let down. Plans have always seemed to just fallen through. It seems like that happens to me quite a bit. Sometimes I have trouble trusting people and just relying on people and trusting that they're gonna follow through. So I mentioned that I've been working on that, trying to open myself up, trying to trust people a little bit more. And yeah, when things like this happen, like it's really disheartening, I gotta say. Like I mentioned in the last video, and like I will continue to mention, I shot all of this footage while I was driving around Washington State. The rest of this footage is going to be comprised of stuff that I shot in the second day of my 2-day trip to Eastern Washington, where I was planning on doing this giant 10-pound burger challenge. I called 6 days beforehand to make sure that they still did the challenge, they still offered it. I called 2 days beforehand to let them know when I was going to be there, and they assured me everything was going to be set up. And when I arrived at the restaurant, lo and behold, somebody dropped the ball. Somebody didn't tell somebody. I assume that I spoke with a waitress on the phone who just didn't pass along to the cook or the manager or whoever that I was going to be doing the challenge. So they weren't expecting me. Unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of thing where I could just wait around for a little bit longer. They just didn't have the food in the restaurant to do the challenge. So, an 800-mile road trip. It's not cheap. It takes a lot of time. I'm really disappointed. But I'm gonna work on staying optimistic. I'm gonna try not to let it get me down. I'm gonna try to bring you more awesome restaurant challenges and more awesome homemade challenges over the course of the summer. Yeah, bear with me, guys. I'm not super happy with the way that this trip turned out. On a positive note, there are some good people in this world, I promise. I will be talking in the second half of this video about some of the specifics about the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest that I did a couple weeks ago. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. And I do want to shout out to a bunch of people that I met for the first time when I was in New York. A couple of people it was really cool to see again when I was in New York. So first and foremost, I gotta say thank you to everybody's favorite okayest competitive eater, Katie Prettyman. Some people might not believe it, but I am quite a timid person in real life. I tend to kind of turn up the exuberance when the camera comes on, but in real life I'm pretty timid, I'm really reserved. So to have Katie there, who's this veteran, to kind of show me the ropes, show me around the place in New York when I was there for my first time, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. It was also really cool to meet a lot of people for the first time that I've only ever seen on screens. So, it was cool to meet Nick Weary for the first time. Unfortunately, I did not get to meet Miki Sudo. She was super busy the entire time, and she was also expecting a child, so I didn't want to take any more of her time or energy than was needed. Also got to meet Mr. Matt Hazard for the first time. Super cool to see him. Juan Rodriguez and Sarah Rodriguez. It's cool to meet them for the first time. There's also Pablo Martinez. Derek Hendrickson, cool to see him again. I was super glad to see him. It's been like 2 years since I've seen that guy, so yeah, super cool to see him. Great to see Crazy Legs Conti again. Somehow equally eclectic and a super down-to-earth guy. So one of the most interesting guys in competitive eating, in my opinion. Also got to shake hands with Notorious B.O.B. It was really weird to have somebody like the OG, like that guy is, to come up and know who I was. I mean, that was just like, it just blew my mind. So on top of that, it's always cool to see all of the ladies of competitive eating. Really cool to meet, like I said, Sarah Rodriguez. Got to meet Sophia DeVita, Jocelyn Walker, Kelly Wong. oh my goodness, Miss Tesh. I cannot remember Tesh's first name now, but it was really cool to meet her. Dr. Renee Rovtar, another OG. And if you guys did see the contest, one more shout out I want to make. If you watched, Badlands Booker was not in the contest, the hot dog eating contest itself. Instead, he was doing a chugging contest against this really cool guy. I want to give him a shout out. I was super glad to meet him. He's a great kid. I don't know if I should call him a kid. He's a pretty young guy though, just making a start on YouTube. He's actually, I shouldn't say that, he's been on YouTube for a couple of years, but he's 19 years old. He wants to make it work. He wants to make YouTube his life. So if you go to his channel, he's got great personality. He's got great camera presence. You can check out some of his videos. So you can go to his channel. It's T. Kenny. It's his channel. He does a lot of chugging challenges. He does some eating challenges too. Check out some of his videos. Toss him a subscription. It'll definitely help him out. All right, guys. Thank you for bearing with me with this. I do want to give one little caveat. I do know that the audio quality on this isn't the best. I wanted to do most of this really like candid, so I shot a lot of it with my phone, so the audio recording isn't the best. Something I'll keep in mind in the future. I'll probably not use my phone for recording anymore. But if you do have trouble with it, turn on the captions. I'll read through the closed captions in the video, make sure that they're all accurate and everything like that. Alright guys, thank you so much for sticking with me, and now we're going to get to the rest of this video, the second day of my Washington State disastrous tour. It is day 2 of my expedition to Eastern Washington. Back to the kind of philosophical musings. I'm going to try to make it a little bit more concrete, a little bit less abstract than what I was talking about yesterday. So today I wanted to talk about basically like the difference between an eating challenge and an eating contest. Now, a lot of people know that I do eating contests occasionally, but the honest truth is that I don't actually like doing eating contests very much. Like, I'll do them, they're pretty cool. I shouldn't say that I don't like them, but I definitely like the food challenges a lot more. And what I mean by the difference between an eating contest and a food challenge is an eating contest is when you have, you know, a lineup of people all eating a certain type of food for a certain amount of time, and the person who eats the most food wins the eating contest. Now, food challenge is more like what you see with like what Randy Santel does, what Adam Richman did on Man vs. Food, where you go to a restaurant, they give you a big plate of food, and they tell you that you've got a certain amount of time to finish that food. And now I really prefer the food challenges at restaurants. I think it does go back to kind of like that individualism that I was talking about yesterday, where it's like, it's just me and the food. There's nothing else in the equation there, you know. If I go into it knowing exactly what the parameters are, I go into it knowing exactly how much food I'm going to eat, and I won't win or lose depending on, you know, what somebody else is feeling that day. Like, I might win an eating contest because I just happen to be the best guy who shows up that day, not particularly because I'm the best shape that I'm in for eating, not particularly because I'm even the best eater there at the time. It might be that I just had a good day and somebody else had a really bad day. And the lack of dependence on other people is one of the reasons why I do like the food challenges a lot more. And if you go to my page on foodchallenges.com, where they've got a list, I've got a list that I keep of all the food challenges and the eating contests that I've done, you'll see that I've done way more food challenges than I have eating contests, even though Major League Eating contests are these big grandiose things that are actually pretty cool to do. And with all that being said, I think I'm going to get in a workout this morning and see if I can't crush this eating challenge or this food challenge this afternoon. Alright guys, wish me luck. I got a couple hours to drive before I get there, so hopefully I can get there in time to actually start this challenge. Alright, and day 2 of my trip around Washington begins. See you guys in a bit. get the lighting on this right. Okay, that looks pretty good. Somewhere around there. Alright, get that nice horse in the background too. I'm at the Wild Horse Monument in Washington, by the way. That's why I've got a bunch of wild horses behind me. Just continuing with what I was talking about with the nature of competition and how it really differs from food challenges that I really prefer doing. And the fact is that in a food challenge, the parameters are all set in concrete beforehand, so you know exactly what you need to do to win. But when it comes to competition, one of the fundamental differences is that the person who wins in a competition, regardless of how easy it seems to accomplish the task in the competition, the winner is determined by the person who worked the hardest and pushed themselves the furthest in the competition itself. Now this is because regardless of how easy a task is, you're looking for whomever is able to accomplish that task the best instead of just whomever is able to accomplish that task, period. So if you take something like long distance running, where I have a lot of experience with being kind of mediocre at it, there are a lot of people in this world who want to be as good as possible as they possibly can at being a long distance runner, and that means that I have a ton of competition and a lot of people who put in their proverbial or literal 10,000 hours to be really, really good at it. Now when it comes to eating contests, relatively few people have decided to attempt to do that at a really high level, and those that have, even fewer people have put in the proverbial and probably less literal 10,000 hours of determined, focused practice. A lot of people have probably spent 10,000 hours actually eating, but when it comes to those 10,000 hours of practice that people are so fond of talking about, whether or not that's actually true, whether or not you actually believe there's something to 10,000 hours specifically, it's more of a concept than anything concrete, really. It requires concentrated and focused training to become really, really good at it, instead of just kind of like mindlessly going about the task. So whether you're talking about something like long distance running or folding t-shirts, something that anybody can do, it's the person who's put in the most work and the most effort, regardless of what that task is, who wins the competition. So with eating contests, of course, there are fewer people, so it's a little bit easier to stand out, but you're still looking at people like Joey Chestnut, who have reached like 90% of the human capacity, somewhere thereabouts. I'm just making that number up. You still have to work really, really hard to surpass somebody like Joey Chestnut, who's out there. Now, that's not quite as hard as trying to surpass someone like Eliud Kipchoge, who's probably reached like 99% of human capacity, but it still means that you have to work really, really hard against these people who might have worked harder, who have more desire, who don't care quite so much about making the sacrifices required to reach the top. Alright guys, I'm going to continue on with my trip east, and I'll see you later. I've been driving way too much in the last couple of days. So I'm at a rest stop right now, nothing super interesting to look at outside, and a couple of idling semi-trucks which are making a lot of noise, so I'm doing this in my car right now. So I promised I was going to talk about the July 4th, Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest, which you guys may or may not have watched on TV. If you did, you know the results. I'm not super proud of the results that I got, but I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I think that there's a lot of takeaways, like tying everything together, pretty much that I've been talking about so far. I know a lot of people really like those contests. I know a lot of people thrive off of the energy and the atmosphere of other people being there. I personally do not. Yeah, the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest, there is an incredible amount of energy at those things among both the people who are competing and the crowd that's there, hyping everybody up. There's lots of shouting. It's a big production. It was a lot more like latched down
and pre-produced than any other contest that I've done before. Everything's pre-planned out. You need to be in certain places at certain times. It was really different, to be honest. It was different than any other contest that I've done. And going into it, for folks that don't know, my personal best for a hot dog eating contest is 32 hot dogs. But at the Nathan's Famous contest, I only did 27, which I said a little disappointing. I'm not super disappointed about it because it was the first contest that I've done coming out of the COVID pandemic, so I didn't really have much of an opportunity or much of an onus to really train for it, since I only got the notification like a couple of weeks beforehand that I was going to be there. So not a big run-up in training. I certainly wasn't super prepared for it, and I just don't feed off of the energy of the crowd like some other competitors do. Like, I know Joey Chestnut kind of famously always performs his best when he's in front of a crowd. I know some of the other workhorse folks who are a little bit more reliable, tend to, like Jeff Esper, tends to be really consistent, does about the same in front of a crowd as he does with his home challenges. And I think I might be one of the latter folks. Yeah, like I said, I just don't thrive. I mean, I don't crash under pressure either. I just don't feel the pressure of being in front of people like some other folks tend to say. I do get some of those little butterflies in the stomach. Maybe I'm a little nervous, but I feel like it's, not to the degree that a lot of people feel when they describe being in front of a crowd of folks. All right, guys, I've got maybe an hour or an hour and a half of driving left to go before I get to I'm going to say my second stop of the day. We'll say that my hotel that I left is the first stop of the day, even though it's kind of late. What are you going to do? I'm going to keep on driving, and I'll talk to you later. Well, it's been a long day, but I finally made it to Tacoma, Washington. Pretty much on the opposite side of Washington State as Tacoma, so you're not going to make that mistake. And I did want to talk a little bit about my experience, some of the things that I learned. It was a little bit of an unusual year. Instead of having the contest on, as I understand it, they usually have it just like on a street corner where it's just a big scrum and people show up in a big mob. So it was a little bit more controlled. People had, it was, first of all, it was in a stadium, in a baseball stadium. So yeah, I think the stadium seating was probably better for spectators because in a big mob, people in the back can't really see super well, but with stadium seating, everybody knows where they're going. Everybody can see. I think it was better, even if the crowd was a little bit smaller. That, it just kind of looked cool from the stage, All right, but anyway, going into the contest, I was a little bit nervous. Had a couple of those anxiety, stomach butterfly things going on. So my stomach was probably a little bit cramped, if you will. Like, I wasn't flexible to fill up my stomach quite as much as I was able to. But also leading up to the contest, I wasn't doing nearly as much, filling my stomach to its capacity to stretch it out as I probably should have. And lastly, I was definitely eating too much protein going into the contest. Because at the end of the day, the reason that I stopped at 27 was because it was making me start to feel sick. And I knew that if I tried to stuff another hot dog down my gullet, I was probably going to get disqualified. So next year, lots of key takeaways that I can take. I'll be a little bit more prepared. That is assuming that I am going to be able to go back next year. I'm certainly going to try, so we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, this has been my trip to the eastern edge of Washington. I hope you enjoyed these little talking head style videos. Peace out.